Hello everyone, my name is Laura, this is my channel Laura's Little Library, and welcome to today's video, which is a casual 5-star prediction reading vlog. So I have a couple of books that I'm really excited to read. I was in a bit of a reading slump, and then I read one book and it pulled me out of that reading slump, and I'm so ready and excited to dive back into reading for this year. And I thought I would just go ahead and bite the bullet and pick up some books that I think are 5 stars. Sometimes I wouldn't want to pick up these books because I'm nervous that they're not actually going to be 5 stars or they're going to let me down or disappoint me, but I've decided that since I've come out of a reading slump, I deserve to read books that I think are going to be amazing. I don't think these will put me back in the reading slump or anything. Honestly, the reading slump was really just put on because I was super busy and just didn't have time to read. But now spring break is coming up quite soon, and so I am going to give these books a try and just kind of get me into reading books that I'm really excited about again. So I have 3 books that I'm going to try and read this week that I am really excited for. The first one that I just got the audiobook for and I'm about to start the audiobook is Emily Wilde Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett. This is the 3rd book in the Emily Wilde series. I am really excited. I loved the first book. I really liked the second book. I wasn't in the best space when I was reading the second book though, because I was listening to it while I was at work, but now I'm going to listen to this at home. So I'm really excited to pick up on the story with Emily Wilde, our professor on fairies and fae, and her adventures with her love, Bramblebee. So I'm very excited to read this. I'm going to start with this one today, like I said, over audio, as I get some other things done. The other book I have, I'm going to read this physically because I don't have the audiobook for it. I have actually already started it, but because I'm reading it physically, it is going slower, and that is Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. I mean, I mentioned this in my romance reading vlog, which was my last reading vlog. I started it and I am really loving it so far, so I just really want to continue reading this. And especially give it the attention it deserves because I'm physically reading it. So this is definitely one that I will be talking about as I continue reading it. I'm so excited. And then the final book that I want to get done in this vlog, which I am most nervous about because I have such high expectations for this book because of what it could be. I'm trying not to increase my expectations, but I do think it has the potential to be my favorite book of the year. And that is A Language of Dragons, and this is by S.F. Williamson. Because this book is historical, they're about to go to war with the dragons, and our main character has been selected to kind of learn the language of the dragons in order to break their codes. So it has everything that I would love. Dragons, language, and language-based missions, and things like that. So this just has so much potential, and I'm really nervous but also really excited. And I just got the audiobook for this today as well, so I would love to read it physically while listening to the audio at the same time and just fully immerse myself. So yeah, those are the 3 books I would like to try and read this week, as I think they are 5-star books. They have I don't know, that spark, that little something that makes me think they could be a 5-star book. So let's get to reading. Time for an update. So I have been reading Emily Wilde Compendium of Lost Tales, and I am 2/3 of the way into this, and I love it so much. I think I like it more than the second book because it has the re-exploration of the first book in a way that the second book was a little, not that it was like plot heavy, but I don't know if it was my reading of it or just the style of the story in the second one, but this is such a good one. I love how we are meeting new fae and how they're introduced and how we are learning about them, but we are still keeping true to like the scholarly aspects. Emily is still a professor who thinks about her career and the books and the paper she's gonna publish. Wendell is still, even though he's the Fae Prince, spoilers if you haven't read the first one, but you know, I feel like you should skip past this if you haven't. He is still like the same interesting character, but he's a little more like lovey, which is really sweet. But yeah, I just love, we are still getting characters from the old books, like we're not moving on from them. And you know, you've got your Fae curse, and how they use stories to gather information is so cool, and I love it so much. It has just transported me to this Fae realm, and it is my happy place. I will say it's very fitting that I'm listening to this while doing this, because this is a like simulator type thing that Brennan just showed me of like planning your garden. So I am literally, I put where the house, the driveway, and the garage is, and then the front yard and the backyard, and I am kind of experimenting with different ideas for the garden and stuff, because I am so excited. This is the first year that I have been an adult and have been able to do my own gardening things, because before this we were always in an apartment and we didn't have access to community gardens or anything like that. So, but this year, because we have a house, I can do my own gardening things. So I am listening to a book about Fae and nature while planning the gardening for the spring. I am so excited. It is so close to spring. Like right now it is the end of February, and all I can think about is getting ready for spring. So we are doing renovations in the house and cleaning, and I'm thinking about decorations and all that, and I cannot wait for March to hit. We had a false spring this week. It got a lot warmer, snow was melting, we even had rain, but I think it's gonna get cold again, it's gonna get wintry again. But I'm excited to have our house feel like spring, so that by the time the winter does leave and it gets warmer, I am ready for it. So this is a great way to get into that, and I'm planning my garden. So that is the reading update. I'm gonna try and finish this tonight. I have less than 2 hours left in the audiobook, but I do also have plans tonight, so we shall see. But my goal is to finish this today and then move on to A Language of Dragons, I believe, as well as continue reading Beg, Borrow, or Steal. But so far, like, this is my dream. This is what little Laura and adult Laura has always wanted to do, is to be like a Fae researcher, be a folklorist and all that. So I'm living my best life here right now with this book and the garden planning. So I'm happy. I'll see you later when I finish this book. Now I have Gatita here to keep me company. Hi, Tella. All right, time for a reading update. So I finished, excuse the hair by the way, I finished Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett. I finished this on the drive back home today, and I loved it. I was like on the verge of tears, which is not normal for me. I don't typically cry for books, especially not like happy books, you know? This book seemed to be everything that I wish I could have in life in a way. Like, I know that there are folklorists and people who collect stories and do archives and things like that, but it just feels like one of those dreams that is so unobtainable because funding is so difficult and things like that. But to just read about somebody who gets to do that, someone who gets to just do research and learn, it just, oh, it warmed my heart so much. And I love the romance in this. It is so sweet, and like, I don't know how Heather Fawcett, but she makes researching and scholastic activities just sound so romantic, but at the same time, like, it is a lot of work, of course. And so this is definitely 5 stars. I loved it more than the second one. I don't know if I necessarily love it more than the first one, because the first one you're focused on a specific region, versus this, it's the idea of fairy tales and what lore is passed down and how that affects the events that are happening, which was such a cool and interesting theme to read about. And I just constantly found myself thinking about like the tales of Irish mythology that I'm familiar with, or other mythologies and fairy tales and stories and things like that, especially because Irish mythology is very strong in this, because Wendell is Irish. You get a lot of that like Irish influence on things, and the fact that the Irish language is in here, but it's not technically the language of Fae, but like it is just so beautiful. I love how much we explored the land and continued to explore these characters. Like I really love that the events that are happening to the characters aren't necessarily changing them from who they were. Like our Emily, our main character, is still the same Emily from the first book, even though she's now in love with her academic rival. And the academic rival, Wendell, is still Wendell, even by the end of this book. Like they grow together, but they're not different from who they were, you know? And it just, everything is just so perfectly cozy and how it should be, and just aesthetic, and it truly does make me wish and dream like a romanticized scholastic life like this. It is incredible. And I mean, of course the cover is gorgeous, but you know, I was listening to the audiobook, and the letters, the way the characters communicate, and the events, and how like things from the previous books come back, and how it helps or hinders, and it just, I sincerely hope there are more books in this series rather than it just being a trilogy. I should probably look up and check on that, but like I could see her doing something of the theme of songs and music or poetry, because you know, this is Lost Tales, before that was maps, and before that, you know, is the encyclopedia. Like there are so many other projects that Emily could work on that they totally should do, and things like that. I cannot recommend this enough. I think this might even be better than the first book, which is quite incredible, because I always love first books in any sort of duology, trilogy, series, saga, whatever. I always love the first one because I feel like it has the most amount of like world building and the introduction to characters, but this, and I have to say, today was literally like, today and yesterday were the perfect days to read this, because the book ends on March 1st, because it's like it's a journal, so you're reading Emily's journal, and you know, March 1st is the last entry. Tomorrow is March 1st. Like today is February 28th, and I started reading this yesterday, so it's just perfect time of that, you know, winter is melting away and spring is coming, and I'm telling you, I can't get over this. So obviously, yes, it is a 5 stars. Woohoo! This prediction came true. This was a 5-star book. I'm a little bit, I would be in like a book hangover if it weren't for the fact that the next book I'm gonna read is A Language of Dragons by S.F. Williamson. So even though like this just left me in such a mood, like I was listening to Irish music and I was thinking about passions that I haven't enacted on in quite a while. This really made me connect back to it. But at the same time, I am so excited to dive into this. It's going to be a very different vibe. I mean, it's also historical. You know, it's very different. And this has strong themes of translations, dystopia, and dragons. And I am so excited to read this. I'm technically on page 8 and I love it already. It was really cool because this author grew up bilingual. Which is amazing, because just like with Babel, having books written about translation with authors who are bilingual or fluent in multiple languages and study multiple languages is just such a deep layer of insight that they put into these fantasy worlds. I could not be happier. So I have good feelings about this one. This was a 5 stars. Like, this is a 5-star prediction vlog, and I sincerely believe that all 3 of these books will probably end up being 5 stars. It's gonna be such a fight figuring out which of possibly these 3 books is my favorite book of the year. Maybe even these 2. Like, I don't know why, but favorite books of the year are almost always in the first 3 months for me, or, you know, the last month. And I think that's just because with the new year, I always think I'm only going to read what I want, what I enjoy. I'm not going to force myself to read something that doesn't sound interesting. So I really dive into books that I'm the most excited to read. And these are also new releases, which is so incredibly crazy. So I am going to start diving into this one. I have the audiobook for it, so I will be listening but also following along because the language talked about in here is Draconic, and they even have different dialects. Like, it's the Komodo dragon dialect, which isn't used so much in England, but unless it's with Singaporean trade. Like, and so our character wants to get into translation school, which I relate to. I'm gonna listen to the audiobook and read it physically because I think I need to read this physically, because that is how I'm going to enjoy it the most. Like Babel, I read physically. I did not have the audiobook for it, and I flew through it so quickly, but I don't have the same time now that I did when Babel came out, so I have the audiobook just to help me keep going and to hear it pronounced, because, you know, at least with Babel, they were all like human languages, most of which I was familiar with the Romance languages and Mandarin versus Cantonese, and whereas this is like a fantasy language. So I'm really intrigued to see how this bilingual author does Draconic language. So anyway, I'll stop babbling on and geeking on about language, but oh, okay, I'm so ready. Hi friends, time for a reading update. I finished Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. I am so excited that I finally finished this. I've been reading it physically for a while now, and it is done. And now the big question is, was it a 5 stars? Kinda. I mean, okay, here's the thing. I loved everything about this book except I have one major, I mean, not even major, but like one critique. Basically, there's a scene in here where they're acting out a scene from her romance book, and it's very spicy, very steamy, but they don't actually touch or anything like that. Like, nothing actually happens. And it was so well done, so beautifully well written. And then later on in the book, you actually have a scene where the characters do get together, and I felt like, hi gatita, and I felt like that scene was missing the emotion and the passion. Like, so much of this book is talking about their emotional connection and how important it is for the characters in this main character's book to have emotion, that they have such a deep emotional connection, and then for the steamy scene to be not super great. And I feel like the same thing happened in this book, of they have this very deep connection, there's a lot of emotion, so when they finally get together in the end, I'm sorry for the spoiler, but I mean, come on. So when that finally happens, and then they have a scene together, and I'm like, this is so short, there's so little to it, like, it felt incomplete. I was like, this was 2 pages long. I am missing so much going on here. So I don't know if this is like a 4.5 or a 5-star book, because other than that one scene, everything else was beautiful, was perfect. I loved both of our main characters. I love how they worked through the struggles that they had with their own personalities and histories and emotions and things like that. And I love like all of our side characters from the other books who come in, and I am so ready. I can see Sarah Adams setting up for the 4th and final sibling in this family. I am so incredibly excited for that book. I know it's coming. And this book did such a great job setting it up. I'm so excited. There's just that one scene, the one scene that I was really looking forward to all book, when the characters finally get together, and it was such a disappointment. So I think this has to be a 4.5 stars, not a 5-star, 4.5, because it was so important to the book and to the characters and everything. And it just, it did not deliver. But I would still highly recommend this. I still absolutely loved this book. It just wasn't a 5-star, which is such a bummer. So, I have now officially read 2 out of the 3 books I will be reading this vlog. This was a 5-star, this is a 4.5 star, and I did start the final book for this vlog. I am, over 100 pages into this book. So I have it on audio so I can listen to it, but I really want to listen to it and follow along physically to really dive deep and immerse myself in this book as much as possible, because I think that has the biggest promise of allowing myself to enjoy it as best I can, the most I can. So now I will focus on reading this final book, and I will see you either when I've made significant progress, when I want to talk about something, or possibly at the end. So far, a lot of setup has happened, and we're finally at the point in the book where this is like the point. You know, we've had it where our main character has an issue, frees a dragon, tells the dragon to burn down the office that's holding her parents and her brother for doing something that she thinks they didn't do, but we don't know if they did it or not. So she gets caught, and then she gets brought to this camp, and they're like, you're gonna be code breakers, you're gonna use your knowledge of the dragon languages to break this new way of communication between dragons that we have discovered and don't know anything about. So that's what they're doing, is that they're using, it's our main character who has a big knowledge, who has a deep knowledge of multiple dragon languages, and then there's another character who knows a lot of human languages. So those two are working together, as well as other people, but those are the two like polyglot multilingualists in the book. So I'm very excited. I'm very intrigued. I feel like I'm just on the cusp of it getting really into what I'm excited about. But so far, I do like the world building and the history and everything that's happened between the humans and dragons. I think it can, I don't know if it's necessarily info dumpy, but I don't mind it when it's info dumpy, because I love learning all the lore and the history and stuff like that. So I'm fine with it. So yeah, I'm excited to keep reading this. Okay, friends, final reading update. So I have been reading this, and I got about halfway through it, and I was listening to it while I was at school, and I was like, oh my goodness, I want to stop so I can record a clip and talk about what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, and I'm like halfway through the book, but because I was at school and I was walking from class to class listening to the audio version, I couldn't do that, and then I just ended up finishing the book. So let's talk about it now. This book, it is very clear that the author has a love and appreciation for language, linguistics, and being raised bilingual. I know that the author does speak multiple languages, and that does come through. There was a line about how our main character only speaks to her mother in Bulgarian, not because she only speaks Bulgarian, like she does speak English, but because that is the language she knows her in. And I just thought that was beautiful, and that was a wonderful way to put it, and it was associating that feeling between our main character and her mom with the dragons, why they would speak to each other in the code language as opposed to speaking to other dragons in a dragon language that is already known to mankind, because that is like the language that those two dragons know each other in. It is so cool. And then also just the whole exploration of trying to figure out the code that they are trying to break, the language of the dragons that they are trying to understand, because it's not like other dragon languages. Really cool, very fascinating. I loved it. However, the rest of the book itself was just on the surface of what it could be, I think. So I gave this book 4 stars, all right? I think the romance. It was a romance subplot, of course, which I do like romance subplots, but I think, again, it was just like right on the surface, didn't really commit to it as much as I would have liked throughout the book. And then not just because like that he was a priest in training, so he was like not gonna participate in romance, but just if we invested a little more time and emotion into that, it would have made the subplot a lot better. If we invested more time and emotion in our main character's relationship with her cousin while they were at the camp, again, just adding more to it would have made me feel a lot more for the characters. And I just, like I said, I feel like everything was surface level and we never really got a chance to dive deep into one aspect or another. I mean, not for everything, but for most things. Like the class system we did dive pretty deep into, and that was really great. It also very much, this is a standalone book, but it feels like it could have been setting up for a series or another book after it. And honestly, I think I would have liked the ending a lot better if it had been the beginning of a series and that we were gonna get more from it, as opposed to it being a standalone. And now I don't feel satisfied. You know, I'm a little bit like, this could have been a really good ending if you had gone this way, or if you had opened it up for another book afterwards. I would have loved that. So all that being said, I still really much enjoyed this and I would still recommend it to people, so this was a 4-star read for me. And so those are all the books that I'm reading in this 5-star prediction vlog. Again, I read Emily Wilde, the third one. This was a 5-star. I loved it. I read Beg, Borrow, or Steal, which was like a 4.5. So close to a 5-star. Not necessarily my favorite, but still so incredibly good. And now A Language of Dragons, which was a 4-star book. So even though not all of them were 5 stars, they were all still very highly rated, and I enjoyed reading them so much, and it made me so happy to read these, especially since I've been in a little bit of a slump recently. So these were the perfect books to get me back into reading, and I'm so happy. Thank you all very much for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, comment down below if you have any books that you think could be 5 stars that you're really excited to get to, or if you have any recommendations for me that you think will be a 5-star book for me, let me know in the comments. I also have other bookish social media linked down below that you can follow me there and keep up to date with what I'm reading and what I think about it and all that jazz. And if you like bookish content like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified as I'm posting videos every week. Again, thank you all very much, and until I see you in the next video, I wish you happy reading!